Good afternoon and welcome to the Living Well program. You can find us here every Wednesday at 1 p.m. on KATB 89.3 in Anchorage as well as KJLP 88.9 in Palmer. You can also catch us online at katb.org. My name is Cammie and I'm here with my co-host Betty. How are we doing today, Betty?
Very well. How are you, Cammie?
Doing pretty good. We are so excited to have Jennifer Waller back in the studio with us today for part 2. We ran out of time and just couldn't quite get all of our questions out. Betty and I were fighting for microphone time to ask her everything we had noted down. So she's back with us today so that we can ask her some questions and just hear more about the redemption side of her story and the victory that God has done and how she's walking in that today. So welcome back, Jennifer.
Thank you.
I do want to say one thing. If the listeners missed the first part, you can go back to our Facebook page, Alaska Christian Women's Facebook page, and the first part of her interview will be on there. Or you can go to YouTube and type in the search engine, Jennifer Waller Testimony, and hear her testimony there. So there's 2 ways to hear the first part of her story. You do not want to miss the first part. It is an amazing story of God's redemption.
Yes.
So, Jennifer, you've told us, you've shared with us your testimony. Tell us now, what are you doing? What is God doing now in your life?
Oh, man, this is the fun part. I always like to share, man, our salvation testimony. You know, you should have a salvation testimony when you gave your life to Christ. You know, even if you don't have this long years of backsliding, you know, you were raised in the church, you've got a time where you were accountable to where you had to decide, I'm going to follow Jesus. But that is our salvation testimony. And then from that day on, you know, I was saved almost 7 years ago. And so my prayer in my life and also other women's life is that that's not where it stops, that we don't just become bench warmers and go to church on Sunday and be okay with that, because God has so much more for every single one of us, such a big purpose to use us. And so I just want to share with you guys some I call them stories, but they're testimonies of what God has done through me and in me and where he's brought me to now. Like she said, I really want you guys to go listen to my testimony of salvation. Revelation 12:11 says, they overcame him. And he's talking about Satan in this verse. We overcome Satan by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. And so not only do other people get encouraged and do they get hope and do they maybe find freedom, but every time I share it, I'm overcoming the enemy. I'm overcoming Satan in other areas of my life, you know, because just because you become a Christian doesn't mean it's all smooth sailing. Doesn't mean that it's just riding your bike down this nice paved road. No, there are valleys and there are trenches and there are storms. But the one thing is, since I've been saved, is I've never been alone. God has been with me. Like his word says, he will never leave me nor forsake me. And that is so true, that I have never been alone through the trials and through the temptations and through the fiery darts that the enemy has shot my way. It was about a year sober that my mom had been going into the prison and leading a Bible study, and she would come home and tell me about it, and she would be so excited, and she would just go on, and I was just catching on to her excitement, and I said, well, how do I get involved with that? And so I signed up for the Alaska Prison Ministry and became approved as a volunteer, where I went in once a month and would lead a Bible study at our local prison down there in Kenai Wildwood, and did that for almost 4 years, and just love the prisons, because those are girls that were just like me, and being born and raised in such a small town, I kid you not, this happened a lot, but a girl would walk in to sit around the table in the library that I would be leading Bible study at, and she would say, Jenny, is that you? And I'd be like, yes. And she's like, you're leading, you know, just blown away, because they knew the depths. She ran with me. She knew the depths, the darkness, where I was, and to see me on the other side of a table living in freedom just gave these girls hope, you know, and so that was always my favorite part, when these girls were desperate and they're depressed and they've basically lost everything, and the glimmer of hope comes back in their eyes. Man, that makes it so worth it for all of the drives out there and stuff. But that girl now, by the way, is leading worship at a Soldotna church. She is living for the Lord, and it's just been so cool to be able to see these testimonies. And But I became the assistant chaplain out there about a year and a half ago. I had noticed, because we're just a pretrial facility, and I had noticed that the women over in Building 5, which is pretrial, that they were not getting Bibles, and that they were really just forgot about, because the sentence facility down there is for men only. Our women get shipped up here to Highland, and so that's where they have all the programming. And so long story short, after a process of me sending an email, hey, I think we need a women's chaplain down here. And they came back and said, well, you're it. And I said, oh my goodness. Okay. So did that for about a year and a half, which actually I just recently stepped down from about a month ago, passed the baton off, because God has got me going into a lot of different speaking ministries all over, not only the state, but I just recently got back from a vacation. I was going home to Ohio to visit my husband's family, and his mom lives in Kentucky, and we've got a lot of relatives out there. So I was going on what I thought was a vacation. I just took my youngest, and people had heard I was coming. People have heard my testimony. Long story short, I ended up preaching in 3 different churches, 2 in Kentucky and 1 in Ohio. And God is just using me wherever I go. And I want to emphasize that everything that I say, everything that I do, it's a lifestyle. You know, I'm not a preacher on Sunday, or I don't share my testimony only at a church. You know, the Muslim priest that I sat by on the airplane from St. Paul to Seattle, 5.5 hours, we had a really good talk, and he got to hear about my Jesus, and he got to hear that he doesn't have to work his way to heaven. And it just breaks my heart to see people. But man, if anyone's going to listen to me, I'm going to tell them about my God, and I'm going to tell them about what he's done for me and what he can do for them, and pray with them. And I did get to tell him, it was a very good conversation. And I learned a lot about Muslims, and he learned a lot about Christianity, and, just the boldness that I don't have by myself. I say I'm scared, and people are like, really? You're scared? You don't look it. And I'm scared on the inside, but with God, all things are possible. And when God prompts me, nudges me, gently says, hey, I want you to say this. Hey, I want you to do this. Hey, I want you to go there. I've already decided, yes, Lord. Yes, Lord. This is the answer. Yes, Lord. And send me, I will go. And then he'll ask me. And when I'm debating it in my mind, I'll be reminded, yes, Lord, I will go. That's my anthem. That's what I say. And so, like I said, my heart is for Alaska. My passion, I've got a burning desire for the villages. We've got, I don't even have to say it, we know that our suicide and addiction and alcoholism and domestic violence rates are just off the charts. And so I don't need to go very far to spread this hope and this redemption that God has given me. And so I have been blessed enough to travel. My very first mission trip was to Pilot Station, a village of about 450 people, and I went with a group called Mercy Wings out of Kenai, and got my feet wet in the villages. And that village, it's completely off the map, and that was about 6 years ago. And it was like a third world country. They live way different than we do here on the road system. And so got my feet wet, got my heart burning for the villages of Alaska. And since then, in the last 4 years, I've been to Emonic, Bethel, Dillingham, St. Michael's, and then more recently, I want to tell you a story about Kodiak, my calling to Kodiak, because this was pretty cool. This was the first time that I actually stepped out on my own to go when God called me. I've never been to Kodiak, didn't know anybody there. I had knew of a youth pastor. We had met. It was more like we met at a summer camp here on the mainland, but didn't know her or the church she went to or anything. And so, like I had said, my anthem is, yes, send me, I will go. And that could even be to the coffee shop in the morning where I get my latte. I am a coffee drinker. And so the girls at my coffee shop call me Chaplain Jen. And so if God prompts me to pray for the girl, or to give her one of my testimony booklets, or a worship CD, that's, yes, send me, I will go. That's in my everyday life. It doesn't mean he's going to send me to Africa or something, And so anyways, long story short, I had just got out of sharing my workshop at the rehab that I do. And I was on my lunch break getting ready to head back to work. And I was flipping through my Facebook, looking at articles, and a news article flashed up from the Anchorage Daily News. And the headline said, Kodiak Chief of Police says drug problem is inundating the island. And so it caught my attention. And so I clicked on it and I started reading this 2-page article. And it was saying how they can't keep up with the flow of meth and heroin to the island, that they're arresting so many people that their jails can't even house them all, and they can't get them off of the island to the mainland quick enough, and there's no rehabs there, and basically just devastation of what drugs is, the flow of them coming in. And as soon as I got done reading the article, God spoke to my spirit and said, you're going to go to Kodiak and you're going to share your testimony. And I was just like, what? And, instantly brushed it off, and got to the job site and was working. And there it came again. You're going to go to Kodiak. And it wouldn't leave. And so I said, Lord, you got to give me a confirmation. This is so far out of me. Never been there. Don't have funds to go there. And so long story short, as soon as I said, give me a confirmation, he said, remember your anthem. Yes, send me. I will go. And I said, all right. We're going to start this, but, God, you've got to pave a way. And so that night I went home, told my husband about it, and he was just kind of like silent, like kind of like, whatever, I've always got these big things that I want to do. And he was just like, whatever, we'll see what happens. And I had a dream that night, and I woke up in basically a panicked nightmare state, breathing hard. And what it was is I was on Kodiak Island. I had went there to share my story and to go into the prison and preach. And all of a sudden the skies went dark because these big fighter jets were surrounding the island, and then the ocean was surrounded by these big warships. And that's kind of when I woke up. I was just like, I just knew that they were going to decimate the island. And so instantly I thought, oh my gosh, that's my, that was God saying, don't go, don't go. And so I kind of got up and was brushing my teeth and getting ready for the day. And God just spoke to me and said, the enemy, for whatever reason, had his crosshairs on the island. The enemy wants to take anyone out, everyone that he can. He knows his time is short, and he wants to take as many people out with him. And so what God showed me was that the ships and the boats and the airplanes, warships, represent the way that the drugs are getting onto the island. It's an island, so the only way to get there through the mail is by plane or by boat or through people or pack horses or whatever. And so as soon as God was showing me what this dream meant, just that I need to get there. And so I got up, spoke with my pastor. He let me share with the church. I just wanted prayer support. I wanted to share my vision with them. I didn't know when I was going. I reached out to that youth pastor. And even if she didn't openly invite me to the church, I was going to go stay in a hotel and there's a big harbor there, and go to the prison and just go speak in the prison. And that was kind of what I had planned. God had something pretty bigger planned, but long story short, I shared with the church. 12 people ended up joining my team. Wow. I took 12 people over to Kodiak, and after speaking that morning, just sharing them with my vision and what I wanted to do, a lady came out after service and said, hey, Jen, do you have any funds? Do you need any? I can't go, but do you need any financial help? And the night before, Saturday night, I kid you not, I knew I was going to be speaking, and I was kind of getting the ball rolling, and I was sweeping my kitchen. I was talking to God. I said, Lord, I need $500 to make this happen. I need a ferry ticket. I got to bring a car over there, a vehicle over. I need the hotel. And I started adding that food, and I was like, Lord, I need $1,000 if I'm going to make this happen, and the verse that just came to my mind, come boldly before the throne of grace, ask what you need. And God, if it's, he's calling me, he's going to equip me, and he's going to make it happen. And so I'm sweeping the kitchen. I'm like, Lord, I need $1,000, and this will not be a penny out of my husband's paycheck, that works so hard for us. And so she asked, Jen, do you need any funds? And I said, well, yeah, I could use a little bit of help. And she's like, well, what do you need? And I wasn't about to tell this lady I need $1,000. And I just said, anything that you can give would help, anything at all. And she leaned over and quietly said to me, well, while you were up there sharing, God spoke to me and told me to give you $1,000.
Wow.
And I was just like, oh my gosh, Lord. And I screamed, and we're in the lobby of the church, and she kind of jumped, and I told her, everything. And so she's like, don't leave. And literally she went and got cash and showed back up with $1,000 cash, and boom, that day it was all paid for. And God just paved the way, opened doors. A church ended up hosting us, and we went to the prison. We had a team of 12, so we went to the women's shelter, and we redid their whole yard. We had men on our team, so they were cutting trees down, mowing grass, and us women were in there cleaning out pantries and organizing. We went to the pregnancy care center over there, volunteered. We one of my favorite outreaches over there, like I said, they have a big harbor, and to get from the boat harbor, they have to cross through the harbor master to get up to, there's a bunch of bars and liquor stores and restaurants like right there, so that when people pull in, it's real quick access for the fishermen. And so we had found a gentleman over there that played the guitar, and we said, our team of 12, we said, hey, let's go down to the harbor master and just start singing songs. You know, there's a automatic pull when there's music, you know, it's like it crosses all borders and all cultures, music does. And so we just started singing Amazing Grace at the harbor master, and people were it's pretty busy at this time. People were walking through, and slowly but surely a couple of the homeless people that were staying there came over, and some of them couldn't even stand, but they were coming over, and pretty soon there's just tears flowing down their faces, and they know, everyone knows Amazing Grace, and they're trying to sing it through their drunken stupor. And then, I kid you not, fishermen had been up to the liquor store, and they're on their way back, and then they're coming over with 6-packs in both hands loaded with booze and beer, and and then I'm looking around, and our circle's getting big. There's a lot of people coming. And so my dad was with me on the trip, and I just said to him, hey, I'm gonna jump up on that bench stool and just give a quick testimony, and then you step in and, you know, let's lead them in prayer and stuff. And so, and this was all just off the cuff, God, the Holy Spirit just directing us. And so as soon as the song ended, I jumped up and just, you know, am yelling, because at this time we got 20 to 30 people gathered around, and just did a 5-minute version of my testimony of being in drugs and alcohol, and my deliverer, and how Jesus is here, and how he can save, set free, and redeem, and help. And like I said, the weeping got louder, and my dad stepped up then and said, if anyone wants to give your life to Christ, and just basically did a salvation prayer. And we've got pictures, some of the teammates were taking pictures of these men on their knees with their alcohol, giving their lives to Christ right there in the harbor. And it's just stuff like that it's so out of my comfort zone. And God says, that's what you were created for. You know, if I could do it, then everyone can give Jen the glory, and everyone could say, wow, Jen, good job. I can't do that stuff. It literally is Jesus living inside of me that gives me the power and the strength and the wisdom and the courage that I need every single day. I ask for it. God, give me boldness today to do your will. Give me courage to go to this radio station and talk. I've never been on air before, and I'm super scared, but I'm doing it scared because that is my motto. That is what I teach the girls in prison is, I know it's going to be scary to turn from your old ways. I know it's going to be scary to leave your abuser or to quit doing drugs, because that's safe for us. That's our comfort zone, but do it scared. You know, and I encourage women of faith too that, you know, like I said, grocery stores, post offices, the place you frequent most, those are the places that you can be the biggest witness to. And I know it's scary, and that's where I want to encourage anyone listening is to do it scared, do it anyways. And so that was back in August when we went to Kodiak. About 2 months ago, I got an email from the pastor inviting me to come back and this time lead a 3-day conference at the church on evangelism and outreach. And so that was my very first conference that I led. They paid my way over. It was pretty cool, and they housed me, and it was super fun, but the conference went great. My heart and passion, like I said, is to know God and to make him known. And if I can encourage anyone or light the fire under someone's butt to get off the pews and to get out there and be God's hands and feet and to do what we were created for, whatever that looks like, you know, whatever your calling is, whatever God has called you to do, then that's what I want to do, is encourage you to do it.
Jen, suppose someone wanted you to come speak for them, or there was a woman wanted to talk to you, had some questions. How could they contact you?
Yes, I've got an email address, Facebook, Jennifer Waller. You can look me up on Facebook, friend me or personal message me, but my email address is un-chained@outlook.com. So that's unchained@outlook.com. Get a hold of me, or like I said, I live in Sterling, and God is definitely paving a way. I would like to talk a minute, if I could, if we have time, about the rehab down there. So when I had graduated that second time, the first couple years, they had wanted me to come back and share my story. And because it's not faith-based rehab, it's ran through the hospital, we've got to be very careful about, mentioning the Bible or the name of Jesus. And I just remember thinking, oh man, because his story is my story. I couldn't tell you my story without telling you about Jesus and what he did for me and how he forgave my sins. And so it was pretty much a no-go for a couple years. And there was a group of us praying because it's very worldly. They let you choose a higher power. That's part of the program. And so you could choose a doorknob, which my roommate did, or a tree, or the moon, whatever it is, you just have to have one, get it on paper to do the program. And so I knew mine was Jesus, but everyone else, I knew they didn't have a chance, to make it because the enemy is real. And so anyways, we prayed for a couple years, and I actually had just kind of dropped the thought of going back in there and coming in with the message, the gospel message. And I got a call from the director a little bit later, and she had read my booklet that I had wrote. It's called Unchained, and it's basically my testimony written out in a booklet, but it's very black and white on how Jesus saved me. It's got the Romans Road to Salvation in it. And so she called a meeting, and when I was in there, the meeting, she said, Jen, this is exactly what I think we need out there at the house. And I was just like, right on. So God opened those doors. I've been going out to the rehab that I went through twice and have been sharing. I get 1 hour, and they let me come in one time every month. And so that's about every cycle of clients. And I get 1 hour, and I just share my testimony, and then I get to say that room right back there is where the presence of God visited me. You don't have to be in a church building. You don't have to be led by a pastor. God is real, and he's alive. And in the 3 years, I haven't kept track, but well over 30 people in that garage have given their lives to Christ. And so it's just so cool to see my pile of ashes, that because I said yes to Jesus, because I said, send me, I will go. Even though I'm scared, God, I will do it because I'm living for this. My life is your life. God, use me how you want. That I get to be his hands and feet, and I get to witness miracles, and I get to witness families coming back together and marriages being healed, and women that were in prison are now singing in front of the church on a worship team. It's just such a beautiful thing to be part of.
It's a beautiful, beautiful story.
Yes.
I know that we're about out of time, but there's one thing I do want you to mention. We were talking earlier, and you said that you had taught your children this mantra from Beth Moore. Will you talk about that just a little bit, please?
Yes, absolutely. That's one of my favorite things to share, and I've got it on video too. But so a couple years ago, our church hosted the simulcast, one of Beth Moore's, and it's called a victory chant, I believe. But basically, it's a chant, and I had taught, my daughter was 4 at the time, and my other daughter was 12, and I taught them both it, and actually my son knows it too, just because he's heard it so much. But I'll be driving to town in the car and look in my rearview mirror, and there'll be my little 4-year-old daughter buckled in her seat, and I'll say, hey, Asher, and so she'll say, what? And I'll say, who are you? And she says this: I am a woman of God, redeemed by Jesus Christ. I am loved, pursued, and chosen. I am equipped with words of life. I am clothed in strength and dignity. I am commissioned here and now. I am gifted by the Spirit. I am forgiven, and I am unbound. And I'm not kidding you. She could say the whole thing. She couldn't pronounce the words dignity. She'd say diggity, and commission, she would skim over him. But that little girl knows who she is. And same with my daughter. I'll say, Sarah, who are you? And she's a teenager. She'll be like, Mom, who are you? And she'll say it. I'm a woman of God. And then it was the other day. So they've known this for a couple years now. And the other day when I was really just struggling and going through some stuff, I looked at Asher and I said, hey, Asher, I just wondered if she would catch on. I said, who am I? Who is Mommy? You are a woman of God, Mom, redeemed by Jesus Christ. And she told me the whole thing. And it was just what I needed to lift up my spirits and to get me back going. A pretty powerful thing.
And your son, he says it a little bit different, doesn't he?
Yes, I asked my son, who are you? And Trent, who are you? And he says, I am a warrior for Christ. And he says it all manly and beefed up. And I say, yes, you are. And while we're talking about our son, I just want to throw in there. So my husband had a son, and he graduated last year, and he was 19 years old. And we got a phone call that he had been in a really bad car wreck, and we're in Alaska and he was in Ohio. And so very, very long story short, we got down to Ohio as quick as possible. He had been life flighted from the scene. And 20 minutes after arriving at the trauma center in Columbus, he had passed away.
Oh.
And so we have been, like I said, there is valleys. There is storms that you don't think you're going to bury your child. You don't even think anything like that. And then boom, all of a sudden you wake up and you're burying your child. And I remember we were staying at our grandma's house the day of his funeral. And she had a thing on the wall. I walked out and I said, God, I can't even get out of the house. I can't go. I can't do this. And the plaque on the wall, it says, because he lives, I can face tomorrow. And so that has been just my mantra for that day. It was, because Jesus lives, yes, I can do today. Because he lives, I can hold my husband up while we carry him and bury our son. And because Jesus lives, no matter what comes my way, no matter what happens in my life, no matter what tomorrow holds, I can face tomorrow and I can face today because of Jesus and who he is.
Yeah.
Jennifer, thank you. I don't even know what else to say. Your story is just amazing, and I love to hear you talk about it and talk about God, and it's just been wonderful having you here. I want to thank you.
Well, and just the testimony, too, of how you're walking in victory. That's so much of what God can use to reach others, is truly seeing who is that God that you serve and how are you walking in victory because of it. The world needs to see that, as do our children, like you mentioned. But I want to ask you one more question. In general, women, people can tend to segregate themselves when they're struggling with addictions, but even probably more so in the church. How can women in the church reach that woman who continually tries to segregate herself from other healthy women because she's not feeling worthy or because she's just struggling? What can you say to the women of faith, but also that woman who is just continuing to pull away, and how can we somehow meet her needs?
Yeah, to the women of faith, because I deal with this a lot now that I'm on this side of the story, is just keep reaching out. Don't give up. A lot of people say, well, all we can do is pray. No, we need to change our attitudes. The most powerful thing that we can do for anyone struggling in addiction, or for anyone that's not saved, is to pray.
Amen.
There is power in prayer. So do not quit praying. Do not give up hope. God hasn't given up hope, so why should we? For the women of faith, keep on praying, and pray boldly and pray out loud. And then if there's someone out there listening that, is on the other side, because I was high a few times I went to church. My sister would invite me and and go high and not want to talk to anyone. But looking back, it was those people that smiled at me. It was those people that held the door open for me, and just showed me common courtesy, because in the world that I lived in, that wasn't an option. You used and you abused every and anyone that you were around. And so just the love that radiated off of, they didn't even have to say anything to me. It just, the love of them, just the power of a smile is huge. And I hope that you keep coming back, man. Don't give up. The enemy wants to kill, steal, and destroy, but our God wants to give you life and to give it abundantly.
Thank you so much for that word of encouragement and challenge to us all to continue praying and really believing in the power of prayer.
Yes.
We want to thank you so much for joining us right here on Living Well. You can find us here every Wednesday at 1 p.m. on KATB 89.3 in Anchorage, as well as KJLP 88.9 in Palmer. You can also catch us online at katb.org. And again, we want to thank you so much, Jennifer, for joining us here today and
Absolutely.
sharing your story.
Yep.